Children's Commissioners, we think that child poverty is really the biggest challenge facing children in our society, in fact facing our societies overall, because unless we invest in our children and make sure they have the proper start in life, then we all lose out. And we're really concerned about some of the changes that have been made to our benefits system over the last few years, and the one that's about to happen, which is the ending of the £20 uplift, the impact that's having directly on children's prospects and children's everyday lives, and even basic things like hunger. So to start with a 2-child limit, that's a really unfair rule, and there's no equivalent to it anywhere else in the whole world. Actually, nowhere else do you only get a certain amount of benefits according to the number of children in your family. So to be clear, people only receive benefits for the first 2 children in their family. And as as Children's Commissioners, we think that's a clear breach of children's rights, who should have an equal opportunity to have the support they need to grow up happy, healthy and safe, no matter how many children are in their family, because which child chooses, to be the 3rd or 4th child in a family? Children have no choice in that. And it just means that some families end up much poorer than others. And just a reminder, these are working families on the whole. The majority of these families have parents who are working, but they're not paid enough for this point in their lives while they've got young children to meet all their basic needs. So this is to help them out for this period so they can continue being working and contributing members of our society. These are not scroungers. They are people who are entitled to support, and children particularly. Now, over the pandemic, the government, I think we were pleased to see a £20 uplift in universal credit, because it's really, really low level. And the government saw these extra people getting universal credit and thought, oh, that's not very much money, we'll give them a bit more. So what's changed now? Because it's still not very much money, and what it's going to do is plunge more families into poverty, make more rely on food banks, and make children actually go hungry and go without basic things that they need. It must continue, and we must make sure that all children get the support they need, no matter the size, how many brothers and sisters they've got.
We spoke before the pandemic happened. We were looking at child poverty then, and you've got some new figures. What are the latest stats for Wales? How's it looking?
Well, Wales unfortunately continues to have the highest levels of child poverty in the UK, although our levels are only 1% higher than England, which also has got very, very high levels. Nearly a third of children in Wales live in poverty, which I think is a really shocking statistic. And I think some people might think, oh, well, poverty's not like it was in the 30s, children aren't barefoot anymore. But I've spoken to lots of children and their parents who are struggling through in life, and it might mean parents deciding not to eat a meal because they want to feed their children. It might mean people being cold in the winter because they can't afford to turn the heating on, and children turning up to school hungry and without clean clothes because there's no washing machine. The washing machine's broken down and nobody has the money to fix it. So this is having a real impact on the things that many of us just take for granted.
We've spoken about options that could be open to change in this country, and one of those is universal basic income. What are your thoughts on that? Could it work in Wales? And do you think it could really help certain groups, elevate them out of poverty?
Well, I'm quite excited that the Welsh Government's trying to think of different ways to tackle child poverty, because we've been stuck with these really high levels of child poverty for years and years and years. In fact, for the whole time that we've had a Welsh Senedd, a Welsh Parliament. Now, there's not everything that the Welsh Government's got powers to do, and there's some things that are just in the hands of Westminster. That's why I had to join with the other commissioners to ask Westminster, please sort out the benefit system and make it fair. But there are things the Welsh Government can do, and I'm always asking them to do more. Now, I'm excited that they're thinking of trying to look at whether if you give everybody in one area or belonging to one group a basic income, and they can then rely on that, but also work on top of it, whether that will reduce poverty. There's been some quite interesting findings from abroad. It's worked better in some areas than other. I'm very keen that we do things that we know work. So I think the government's right to just try it in a small scale first. And if it works, wow, wouldn't it be great to have a more equal society? Because another thing the evidence shows us, research evidence shows us, is that if we have a more equal society, it's better for everyone. So countries where incomes are more equal, like in Scandinavian countries, for example, actually everyone, no matter how rich or poor they are happier. They experience less crime in their communities, and people's health is better too. So it benefits all of us. This is not just about subsidising people that some people say are too lazy to work. I don't agree with that, by the way. It's about making society better for all of us. So go for it, Welsh Government, but let's keep a close eye on whether it really works.
One of the cohorts mentioned with the care leavers, is that a particular interest to you? Would you like to see that group given priority?
I'm so interested in this idea of supporting care leavers. And these are children, of course, have grown up, at least some of their childhood, in foster care or in children's homes. And unfortunately, unlike children, our own children, who we may continue, I've got, a couple of young adults in my family, I continue, of course, to subsidise and to provide them with a bed to sleep in if they can't pay their rent, that kind of thing. Many of these children can't rely on those kind of networks, and they often are living in dire poverty. The average kind of allowance to them is less than £7 a day when they're being supported by the local authority for their everyday needs. £7 for food, bills, transport to college, clothes, everything. It's not much. Most of us couldn't manage on that. They're amongst the poorest in our society, and I think they need a leg up because we took them into care, and they're our children, and we should give them the support that any parent would.